All right, so what's up? I'm here with Jonathan Johnny Glazer. Nobody knows who he is. His family, his kids, his wife, his loved ones, his neighbors know who he is, but you watching on YouTube don't because it's the first and only time he's ever talked with anybody about investing. But Jonathan's got 50 plus years, or right about 50 years of investing knowledge. So, hey, we're going to tap into some of your wisdom and things you may have learned along the way. So, man, thank you so very much for coming on and having this chat here.
My pleasure, Russ. And just point me in the direction of where I start, and I'll become your stream of consciousness tonight.
Well, I don't know, man. Why don't we just start with your origin? Every superhero has an origin story. So what's the Cliff Note version of your origin story? Where did you come from, and give us some point of reference as to where you are in the world right now?
Okay, so I'm retired 2 years with my wife Kim. We live on dividends and Social Security. Dad was in the service, traveled all over the world,
Which
and
branch?
Navy.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah. So, Central Africa, land base, North Africa, Nuasur, yeah, France for a while. So we flogged all over the U.S., came back here. I'll give you the stock story, the beginning of the stock story. Grandmother died when I was about, I guess, 13, 14 years old and left me $2,000. So Dad said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to become an investor. I want to invest in the stock market." So, "What do you want to buy?" And I said, DuPont. They make gunpowder, I guess, at the time, being a kid. And we bought $2,000 worth of DuPont. He set up a custodial account for me through Quick and Riley. It was $49.95. You had to go to an office, three-part paper. And we started with 50 shares of DuPont. And then,
what years? What are the years of
well,
this?
I'm going to say in 1969, 1970.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there were a lot of splits and spinoffs, and it did well, but not as well as somebody who would have invested in Walmart at the time. But I was a kid. So I guess from there we bought a few more stocks. By then I was about 14, 15. So stocks like McDonald's, Coca-Cola that were familiar to a kid, but no stock advice, no, I think by the time I was 18 and 19, I had 6 or 7 positions. Mobil, Exxon, Philip Morris begat Kraft Heinz, Mondelez, Altria, 4 for 1 or four out of one. And the Quick and Riley account, the shares, we didn't hold, it wasn't held in any custodial accounts. You received the physical shares, paper.
That's cool.
And from there, we set up through transfer agents, ComputerShare, Equiserve, various positions. Fast forward to the 20s, I'm married with a kid on the way. They had direct stock purchase plans through many companies. Again, ComputerShare, Equiserve, or some of the transfer agents, but you would dutifully put a stamp on an envelope, sign up for one of their direct stock purchase plans, send in a check for whatever you could scrape together. And those were hard times. So it might be $100 a month, 50, 75. And those shares were reinvested as fractional shares. So you never looked around. You didn't listen to the noise. You bought companies that you believed in, and you had to believe in them. You didn't have lists of dividend aristocrats or dividend kings back then. You bought companies you believed in, you reinvested and sent voluntary contributions in. Next thing you know, Fidelity and Schwab and all the big brokers come along and $0 trades, and you take all those paper certificates, open up a Fidelity or a Schwab or Wells account, whatever you fancy, and then the danger starts because Russ, then you can buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell.
So do you think that made it easier back in those days to hold stocks when you couldn't just hear some panic on the news and all of a sudden you got your phone in your pocket, you just tap sell. So back then when you had to sell, it took a lot of effort to buy and sell, right?
You had to call. First of all, you had to call, and then you called the transfer agent, and they might sell it that day, might sell the stock that day, but it was an average of the high and low of the day. And then they mailed you a check. It was just a lot of work. So it forced you to stay the course. And, I would say most of the companies, everybody will tell you they bought Procter and Gamble and Johnson back in the day. But the ones I remembered back in the day clearly, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Mobil, Exxon Mobil, which Exxon and mobile merged. And oh, another one. We called this one. Oh gosh, they called it the widows and orphan stock. This was in the 80s. Dominion Resources, which became Dominion Power D, had a direct stock purchase plan. Everyone owned it, paid a fine dividend along with NEM, Newmont Mining. I mean, some of these names, what? You just kept your head down, reinvested the dividends as fractional shares, and stayed disciplined. And that was the other part, too. You had to force yourself to forego those dinings out and some of the pleasures in life or in the early stages to start building that, I guess what Buffett refers to as the snowball. But to have that hunger to be able to provide for your family, your children, your grandchildren, yourself to pay the bills, force that discipline, I think.
Delayed gratification and forced delayed helping to force delay that gratification in a way. It's crazy, you know. They say the hyperconnectivity is both a blessing and a curse, and listening to you regale us with those stories of back in the day, it almost makes me kind of jealous because now I can just on a Tuesday at noon, all of a sudden I can be like, oh no, I think I should sell this thing, and just right there I could just sell. As long as I have an internet connection, boom, it
Guilty
can
as
be.
charged, Russ. Today, when I got that special dividend in, I'm buying. I'm like, oh, I want a few more shares of KMB. I need some more Kimberly Clark. Kim loves Kimberly Clark. The Kleenex and diapers. We're going to buy some more KMB. Oh, Mo, it's a cent stock, but it pays an 8% dividend. Let's pick up one share of this, two of that, and zero trading fees. It can be both addictive and it can be a blessing and a curse. I mean, I had days where I come from the days of Nokia bag phones and pagers. The one lucky thing that we did many years ago, I worked for a company where we had a guy that was very worldly, Quattro Pro before XL 123. And he traveled all over the world. And he said, this company, Apple, is making some pretty good stuff. I'm like, no, what are you talking about? There's Microsoft. And kind of back then it was like beta, VHS, beta format, which no one even knows about today. The shoulder held cameras and
I
look at
remember
it.
Betamax. I'm a kid, but I remember Beta. I watched Michael Jackson's Thriller on Betamax,
Oh
so there
man,
you go.
you're not as young as I thought you were then.
I was a little. I was born in '78, so
Okay.
I was '83, so I was old enough to get the living daylight scared out of me and not be able to sleep for a couple weeks. But
That he would get. We all told him we want a 401k for the company. And he said, "Well, I don't know. I'll open one up, but I'll get to decide what we buy." So he started buying Apple shares. But that was back when nobody loved Apple. It was trading between $3 and I don't know $5, $6 a share. We had an administrative assistant in there, and I don't know what she made, but I don't think she made that much. But every month she was buying 100 shares of Apple. 4 or 5 years there. Well, then it spiked up again. It had a number of splits, and then the last split I think was 7 for 1, and then it jumped up to I don't know 250, 260. It settled back down to 230s I think. But she put her two sons through college and retired, I think, in her early 50s. I don't even know how much she had, but I would say conservatively 25,000 shares of Apple post the 7 for 1
yeah,
split. So that was just
good for
and
her.
none of us believed in Apple. Like, oh man, who wants that company? That was
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. I remember reading about it, even though I wasn't an investor like I am now. I remember reading about Apple, and it must have been around the great financial crisis, the GFC, because I was like, Apple, what is the company that I made the Apple IIe that I used to play Oregon Trail on and die of
right,
dysentery?
right,
That Apple? I'm like, who
yeah.
would buy this thing? And I'm like, now they're putting music on it thing. I'm like, come on, gimmick. Yeah, shows what I know.
You never would have known. And even now, I look at it, I'm like, it's expensive now. And I look at the dividend in retirement. I just don't even want to look at a stock unless it's paying at least 3 or 4%, and they're paying I don't know 0.5%, 0.39%, something really low like that. And the
Yeah.
problem with Apple is if you own Apple in retirement and you have to sell a few shares every year, you incur those. I mean, even long-term capital gains. I think 15%. So you
Right.
get whacked for taxes. My journey might not work for everyone, but I really believe that buying great companies that you would believe in, Russ, that anyone
Hmm.
believes in, that because I like them doesn't mean you have to like them. People might hate Procter and Gamble or Clorox or Colgate, but I think the dividend aristocrats and kings are a great place to start. Build the core of those, buy a lump sum, and put them away. Reinvest the dividends as fractional shares, and come back at retirement age, and just do that for fun and see where it leads you. But unfortunately, you'll be an old guy like me, so you know.
I hope, man. I've told people that if I don't make it to 100, I'm going to be very disappointed. God willing that I'm not, drooling on myself in a convalescent home or something. But
Oh yeah,
as long as I'm still mentally there and I can fend for myself. Thinking of those early days, is there any specific mistakes that you made early on?
a lot of them. And
Yeah.
no one, the funny thing is, no one ever talks about their losers. And I won't dwell on a couple of them because some of them I got out early on. Like I owned a company called ITT, and that did well. It spun off the Hartford. And overall, it did well. But at the time, I had converted the certificates into shares, and I can't even remember what I rolled them back into. I kept a few of the Hartford shares, but ITT's gone. But yeah, I'll tell you two mistakes. One of them, both of them haven't played out yet. PARA, Paramount, not the A shares, but the Bs. And I was in good company because Berkshire bought a boatload of them, and so did Mario Gabelli, and I think he's still holding a few, quite a few. I exited out. I'd say that was probably a 50% loss, and thank God it was not a lot of shares, but it was a wake-up call, and I was disappointed because like the rules of engagement, if a company slashes or cuts the dividend, I'm out. And if the management does that and then doesn't take responsibility or take it on the chin for what they've wrought, I mean, I felt like Paramount did that. Now, Rig's the other one, Transocean. RIG is the symbol. I think it's trading between $3 and $4 a share. I was in Rig probably 15 years ago. I think it's maybe gone up $1 since then, and that was a buy at about 4 or 5 and a sell at just under 3. So I harvested a little bit of tax losses there. But those are the two that instantly come to mind. I would never buy Paramount again, ever. I wouldn't buy Rig ever. When I'm done, I'm done. And no anger, it was a learning experience. I blamed myself. I looked in the mirror and said, that's the guy you want to blame, right?
Yeah, I love it, dude. That's such a great point because it's nobody else's fault because you're the one hitting buy and sell, and it's your fault. Like it's same with me. It's my fault when we make these bad investments. Speaking of making losses and taking it on the chin, by my calculation, you've probably invested through at least 8 or 9 market crashes. How did you mentally handle watching your portfolio drop quite a bit and just not panic and sell everything and run for the hills?
Russ, I got to tell you, that's a great question. And the answer is that I just kept my head down. That's that phrase, just ignore the noise. I just ignored the noise and I saw it as a buying opportunity at the time. I had a lot of smart friends with MBAs and finance and like, oh, Johnny, time to get out. We're all going to cash. And they took everything out of the market and sat in cash until it, quote, was going to recover. And the whole ride down, at the time we had a pretty good commission plan. By the way, that book, Richest Man in Babylon, that's a great read. Just to digress for a second there. I just kept my head down and I kept plowing back in every penny into what appeared to be the best investments. And at the time, I used some old methods like what was the 52-week range? Here's the 52-week low, here's the high. Is the price to earning ratio anything below 20? So when you had 6s and 5s and 4s, I threw every commission, every bit of extra money we had into those stocks, and I never got out. I was a little distraught, but I knew they were good companies. And when you look at the analogies, Berkshire's used those analogies of like we've been through World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, all of these catastrophic world events, and the market always, knock on wood, it's always snapped back.
I've thought of that. I've only really dealt with, so I was invested in a 401k, not nearly putting enough when 2008, 2009 happened. So that was easy for me because mostly I wasn't paying attention. And ended up being a really good thing. Two things. It is funny because I've talked recently with people that during that time they ended up selling because they thought they would jump back in. And then I asked, the one acquaintance, I said, well, how did you know when you were going to get back in? He's like, I guess I didn't really think about that. Just everybody else was selling, going to cash. And then he's like, then the market started going up and up. And I was like, all right, when it comes back down, I'll get in. Never came back down. So I said, so effectively, you sold low and bought high. He's like, yeah, pretty much. I'm
and
like,
it's
oh,
human nature to follow that herd. Like we were talking about this the other day. Wayne Gretzky try to skate to where the puck's going to be. Right. I got to tell you, when we don't let me forget to tell you because I love to talk about this one winning stock I had. One winner. And then it tanked. It's the only time I've ever used a stop loss, by the way. So don't let me forget to
yeah.
tell you that one towards the end.
Yeah, and the point I was going to make about that is, the future is unknown and unknowable, so we can't beat ourselves up too much. And hey, as long as we learn a lesson and we can apply that to what we do next, then there's something to be said for that. But I'll forget. Just tell us about the stock now. So
Okay.
I want to hear.
But first, again, that whole thing about discipline, it's almost like a lifestyle. It's almost like that guy you see picking up the penny off the ground and he holds it up and says, the beginning of the next million, Warren Buffett,
It's
right?
me. Yeah.
You have to forego some things. And I remember, gosh, when Kim and I were first married, we couldn't rub two nickels together. And we'd go out to dinner on her birthday, on our anniversary, and on my birthday. 3 times a year. And now we can afford to go out almost once a week. The big stock had a neighbor who was at the time suffering from like I guess they call it like metastatic resistant prostate cancer, and they had
Hmm.
put him on some sort of experimental infusion where they treated his blood and reinfused it, and it was made by a company called Dendreon. The ticker was DNDN. Don't bother looking it up. I think the assets in bankruptcy were acquired by Pfizer. I might be wrong on that, but
Okay.
it was trading at about $2 a share, and he put about $100,000 into the
Mm.
stock. I think he had 50,000 shares. So I said, "Hey, if it's good enough for Doug, I'm going to buy a few." So I bought 2,000 shares of it at about 2.25 a share. I said it'll never really spike up. So I put in a stop loss at 30. They got a provisional FDA approval for the treatment, which is called Provenge, Provenge. Stock spikes up to like 40 something, settles back down, and I'm stopped out at 30 a share. So that's the other thing in the market. If you have a winner, you always say, "Gosh, this was great," and then suddenly it sinks in. Should have held longer. Should have bought more. So that exuberance, that happy feeling, is very short lived. So I got stopped out. Later, it turned out the FDA didn't approve it all the way. It was provisional. A year later, I think they filed.
You make a really good point too. Why it's really hard to invest in biopharmaceutical stocks. That's what I've seen is that they get those crazy. They're lottery tickets essentially. If you don't, you want to play the lottery. I always think buy a biopharma stock because you never know when they're going to get that little hint of approval and just spike. But then, like you said, they could
And who
reject
knows
it.
now?
And
The pharma, I don't know, the pharma right now. If I were going to bet on any one of them, I think I told you the one that I would consider buying into more of right now would be Pfizer because you've got some activist investors involved with
mhm.
deep pockets.
Be Elliott Management. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
Elliott.
you're right.
Elliott,
It is
yeah, they
Elliott
seem to get
Management.
involved in a lot. Yeah, and it's funny. Like it made it easier, and I remember what I wanted to say about the COVID crash is that I was just looking at the businesses in particular. I remember that's when I started position in Mobile or Exxon Mobil and McDonald's,
Yeah.
and it was actually very easy to buy and hold and buy more of stocks I was down on because I thought this is either the zombie apocalypse and it's not going to matter anyway, or they're going to figure it out and these companies are going to come back. So I remember other people were selling and saying like, aren't you selling everything? And I was like, no, I'm kind of upset because I can't buy anymore. I've spent all my money.
Yeah.
And like you said, man, just focus on the business. Is the business, do you think there's going to be the storm clouds are going to part, the sun's going to come out and the business is going to make it? If so, then it's probably a great time to buy, right?
And those dividend aristocrats and kings, not necessarily all of them, those lists just weren't available. Now you go on the internet. I just downloaded, what is it, Chat GP, is it? That
Chat
AI
GPT.
free
Yep. Yep.
version. You get 3 or 4 questions a day. So I typed in, what are great retirement stocks? And what pops up? Procter & Gamble, J&J, SCHD. And then it was a lot of fun. But You were talking about ETFs too. So I looked through the portfolio. I said I was light on ETFs. Across the portfolio, I've got 12 of them. I've added to them. I think that's come with older age where I'm like, gosh, maybe I'm not as confident in the selections I made because I have listened to a lot of the noise. And my two sons work in the banking industry. So they're all about SPI, VOO. ETFs, Dad. You're a layman. You're not good enough to beat the market, and I always have to remind them that they don't have any student debt because we did well enough for me to be able to pay for that. But it takes time too. And you have to believe in those companies. I honestly think get them and forget them. Buy companies that you like. The aristocrats and the kings, what are they? Maybe 100 companies? Drill down on those. There's got to be 5 or 10 of them that you like, that any individual would like. Open a brokerage account, put a lump sum in there, layer into it, buy 10 of them, and just reinvest the dividends as fractional shares, and come back 50 years later and thank me. It's a simple process. And then if you want to do anything else, then put it on autopilot. Max out that 401k. If the employer's matching, that's free money. If he matches 25 cents on the dollar, that's an automatic 25% return if your investment does nothing. And it's tax deferred, right? I don't know. That's the old guy talking. That just and
Well,
in
so
retirement too, you have the budgets too, so you know what everything costs, what your burn is every month. There should be enough. You have to enjoy life too. The only thing that the money does is it buys you time with your children, your grandchildren, to go for a hike in the woods, whatever you want. That's what money is to me. It's not money to walk around in my pocket with and hold and say, hey, look at me. I've got some money. It's what it allows you to do to help your children, grandchildren, friends, family, charities.
help the world be a better place, a little bit better than you left it. So, yeah, you're in wealth preservation mode, but if you're in wealth accumulation mode, things might be different. Now, you said I can come back in 50 years and thank you. So, apparently, you're planning on living to what, 110 plus or so.
No, I
So,
don't know.
I
If I get to, Mom was 92 and Dad was 80 something. So if I can split the difference and just add those two divided by two, I'll take 88. Yeah.
hypothetically, then, let's say you're out for that walk in the woods and you find the fountain of youth, and all of a sudden, Jonathan is 25 years old again. How might you invest differently today with knowing what you know and the knowledge you've accumulated from 50 years? What would you do differently if you were just starting out investing today and you're in your mid 20s?
Russ, it's funny you say that because I think that the more I read, the more confused and the less I know. I think knowing less back in the day made it easier for me to make the decisions. And now there's so many
Wow.
smart people writing books. I mean, Susan Buffett's book on the Tao of Warren Buffett, great little read. The Random Walk Down Wall Street. This guy, Burton Malkiel, he's a brilliant guy. I think that I did better when I was just the simple guy, torch down roofing, and I come home and say, hey, this company looks good. And look, a lot of people are drinking Coca-Cola, and $3 would buy you double cheeseburger, a Coke, and small fries at McDonald's. It's just simple thinking about the world around you. What people consume. That's why I love consumer staples so much. Do you think people are going to stop eating mac and cheese? Maybe. I don't know. I
That's
hope
why
not.
Hershey's, as I was reminded of a Warren Buffett story when he was riding with somebody and, he was talking about Snickers bar, like the number one Snicker or the number one candy bar, whatever, 40 years ago, Snickers, the number one candy bar now, Snickers. Whether those numbers are right, I don't know. But the point is that it's still human behavior, and it's tough to bet against things like the American eater. We like to eat here in this country.
Absolutely. If I had a time machine, I'd go back. I'd buy Apple, Netflix. I'd buy all the ones that back in the day. For young people going forward, the ETFs are very solid. I mean, when you mentioned VOO and SPY, I was talking to my sons about it. I said, Dad, you can call it a mechanical rabbit at the dog races, but the returns are quite good. SCHD, same. And SCHD, I prefer more right now because it pays, I guess, well, it was paying a 3.5 dividend. And it's funny, you don't want to just live for the dividends. And I sound like, I just want to buy stocks that are paying great dividends, but you want to buy companies that are growing their dividends too,
Right.
not that aren't just stagnant, that are growing to keep up with whatever we're calling inflation now. I mean, you can't just get 5% every year in perpetuity. You want to have a company that's at least keeping up with inflation. Or
There's a lot of fads that right now that from whenever, hey, if you're in the
AI.
future, like 5 years from now, if somebody's watching this, you're in the future 5 years from now, what's up if this is still out there? But one of the trends now is generative AI, and also, people are thinking that this incoming administration is going to destroy all the junk food stocks. But Jonathan, you've seen a lot of trends come and go. So how do you think about or identify the difference between a genuine opportunity or something that could be like a dangerous fad?
Well, the technology is so easy to get sucked into. I'll tell you, I look at the AI companies, the Magnificent Seven. Oh man, NVIDIA's cool. We were talking about ASLM the other day. It's cool stuff, and I love technology. We used to have guys say, "I'll never own a computer." I'm like, why wouldn't you? You come from pager days where you're having to find a payphone to return a call because someone paged you. This technology is cool. Having an iPhone on your hip gives you unlimited power. I don't know. I'm no smarter than the next guy about identifying, a fad. Some of it, the stuff is really cool. Like, you talk about the South Sea bubbles and all of this other. I keep coming back to consumer staples, the basic human needs. I mean, shelter, warmth, food, water.
Maslow's
And
hierarchy of needs, yeah.
yeah, see, I look at consumer staples as who doesn't love a Hershey bar and a Coca Cola? They're going to be around for a long time. I think Coca Cola is going to be around. Hershey. It's getting interesting with Mondelez and MDLZ and Hershey HSY because Mondelez wants to take them out. So I think I had told you I was starting to try to add to both positions because I own them and I love them both. In retirement, I don't have a cannon like Buffett. I've got the proverbial BB gun, so you can only load so much in. And after today, I'm dry. There's no powder left. I have nothing left to invest till. Hold on. This is the other thing. You make notes of the dividends that are coming in and when they're coming in and scratching
Nice.
off. And I'm pretty dry until the beginning of February again. I think consumer staples, Hershey, Mondelez, Coca-Cola, people have to eat. They're not, no matter what the FDA says. Look at Altria. I mean, people, God forbid, it's horrible. It's a cent stock, MO.
Yeah.
But they'll
Yeah.
reinvent themselves into vaping, which they've done. Juul was a disaster. Kraft Heinz will probably claw its way back at some point or another. Colgate, there's a perfect example. I don't know, 48% of the world's toothpaste. I don't think people are going to stop brushing their teeth.
I tell people if you need an example, you can right now pause the video, go up into your bathroom, and start looking through your cabinets and your drawers, and even on top of your sink. How many things in there do you have that Procter and Gamble logo? Quite a bit.
Hey, I'll tell you my wife's favorite stock, her all-time favorite, Kimberly-Clark, KMB. Diapers coming into the world, diapers going out of the world,
Yep.
Kleenex. I mean, we go through a lot of Kleenex in this house. I mean, between kids, grandkids, papier de toilette, toilet paper, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, consumer staples are my favorite sector. And I don't think the dinosaur blood's going away anytime soon. So, I'm not a fan of the lithium polymers. They haven't figured that out well enough for the range. And hydrogen fuel cells probably still too dangerous. So 87 regular is going to be around for a while. So the oil and gas stocks will probably be around for a bit longer.
And plastic, petrochemicals, they go into plastic, the feedstock. So
Absolutely.
it's, I don't know if you've looked around lately, but it seems like it's near impossible to avoid touching something that is not plastic or our clothes are made with. It's crazy.
Hey, when you go over to Scotland, I wore just for you. See that?
Ah, nice.
Yeah, it's the old British wool.
Yeah, we are planning a trip, so that should be that'll be interesting.
Hey, look, if you're in London, consider that taking that train to Scotland.
Oh,
Edinburgh.
we
I
are.
mean, the
Oh,
history
we are.
there.
It's absolutely. That's my daughter's a big Harry Potter fan, so we have to go to Scotland. It's
And they
it's
have pretty good
non-negotiable.
Wi-Fi. They have good Wi-Fi over there too,
Good.
so you'll be able to stay up with the markets.
So, is there any fun fads that you had fallen into? Well, there's a lot of F's. Like I don't know, maybe in any investing. I mean, I don't know. You probably wore bell bottoms and maybe pet rocks and things like
Oh
that.
yeah, that
But
was all. I mean, the guy that invented the pet rock. I remember that. He made himself a millionaire. Or the Popeil Pocket Fisherman, that little collapsible fishing rod that was like orange and yellow. They still
Yep.
make them too. I just wasn't smart enough to see the next great thing. I took the everyday approach of the simple layman and bought companies I liked, reinvested the shares, the dividends as fractional shares, and put it on autopilot. If I had the tools then that I have now, it probably would have been a disaster. Really,
You
having
see,
all those fail safes in place, like putting a stamp on an envelope, mailing a check in. Who even does that anymore?
so there you go. You said just keep your head down and you'll avoid fads. I mean, it's just as simple as that, right?
And the tax efficiency too. Ignore the noise, buy great companies, and max out your 401k at work, regular contributions, and tax deferred accounts like Roth accounts. When I first
Yeah.
opened up an IRA, you didn't have that option. Anything that we take out of there on the RMDs when we start, I guess, what is it, 72, then we'll be taxed. Whereas a Roth, you're taxed going in. So any gains you make. Suppose, for example, you bought Tesla at, I don't know, $50, $60 a share going in, and then it spiked. And I love splits too. I don't care what they say about cutting up the pizza. I love it when a company splits.
Yeah,
So,
well, over time, if they keep becoming more profitable, then all those little shares are just going to go up. So it's all about profitability and make it, like you said, just good companies. Jonathan, I want to ask you. So,
yeah.
having achieved financial independence, what is the most, I don't know, the most surprising thing you've learned about money?
Well, I think I told you many years ago, 2 weeks before Christmas, our company closed the division. I had to go around telling people 2 weeks before Christmas that we wouldn't have a job after the new year, and I didn't want to tell my family because I didn't want to spoil the big day for them. And I just looked in the mirror, and afterwards it was tough. Put on a happy face, and of course we were all working within a couple of weeks. But I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, never again. So what comes with that money? I shouldn't say this, but we call it FU money. If something like that happens, you can just say, I'll be fine, and so will my family. So the money, it makes the fear of losing your job go away. And then in retirement, it gives you more money to, rent a house down at the beach for the whole family, or start a 529 for your grandkids and give your kids a nice wedding or an education. That's what it does. I mean, for me, I'm at that age where, if I want something, I buy it. It's usually like a good bottle of single malt scotch every once
There
in
you
a
go.
while. But more the pleasure of being able to help the people you love, and that lack of fear. I mean, when we all got laid off, that's a bad feeling. Anybody who's ever been laid off, it makes the fear go away. It gives you that confidence, and you do it yourself. Again, looking in the mirror, you want to blame someone for the losses, blame yourself. But on the same token, you become the master of your own destiny, and it gives you a tremendous amount of self-confidence. And reading what they say about money managers in this book here, I think you and I are probably doing better than 95% of them, really.
I love it. It's knowledge, man. It's like you said. It's that's what I get from you is just knowledge is power. But I guess too much too much knowledge can also be a bit debilitating. And
It really does,
yeah,
Russ. To know too much, and I find I'm reading more and more, you become more easily swayed by someone else's ideas. Oh, he's really bright. He has two MBAs and he worked for this investment company. But then you back test it and you look at their investment record. You say, well, he averaged about 8% a year for 15 years, and that's not that great. That's really not that great. I think I told you my wife's portfolio, which is just a get it and forget it. I think she has about 35 companies in there. The usual culprits: Abbott, AbbVie, from A's down to X to ExxonMobil, with, of course, KMB in the middle. I look at some of the in and outs that I've done as a comparative between the two portfolios, and hers has outperformed mine by roughly 2 to 1 on a self-tending, like, set the jib, set the main, put the auto helm 2000 on, and next stop Bermuda, right?
so get it and
um,
forget it. I like that, man. Get it and forget it.
get it and forget it. But they were solid companies, and I'd like to take credit for picking out a lot of them. But they were simply Colgate, Clorox, Procter and Gamble. I mean, you start falling asleep if you rattle them all off. And she's in that point now where she's not reinvesting the dividends. She takes it out once a month, and
And
it's
it's party time with those dividends. You
oh
worked
man, it
hard,
was
you let
party
them
time
grow.
when she got the ORI today, her share of the ORI, because
Yeah.
we both have like portfolios. We have main ones, and then she has like hers, and then there's mine, and we kind of compete with each other a little bit. But also that we found in after 40 something years of money that we saw a lot of friends of ours who were couples that many of whom aren't together. They were always fighting about money because one was spending too much on something. So we always felt you had to have a joint checking account, but we should each have our own little baby checking account where we could draw down if I wanted to buy, well, I'm not going to say a new motorcycle because those days are fast ending, but you didn't have to ask permission. And then that way you never fought over money. Real simple rule.
I like it. So you each have your own little fun account.
Yeah, oh, yeah, and
Yeah.
I tend to be more of like I'm still reinvesting them because the fear goes away, but there's growing up in a poor family, there's always that fear. No matter how much you're accumulating, will it be enough? What if? That's very small fear. You compartmentalize it, you put it off in the corner somewhere, but it's nice to just keep building it in case. And I like a lot of companies, like the investor John Buckingham. I agree with him.
Okay.
I like companies, and I like a lot of them. So I don't believe in being limited to 20 companies or 30 companies. I mean, I'm not going to tell you exactly how many I have, but you got a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
But they're all good, solid companies. But anything could happen. I mean, look at the horrible fires in California. I mean, how'd you like to be the insurer for? I mean, I would imagine there's some pretty big insurance companies that are going to be on the hook.
It's unfortunate. Again, it just goes right back to the future is not only unknown, but it's unknowable. So, hey,
Yeah.
speaking of fun and fun accounts, what as we're landing the plane here, what's something fun that you're doing right now? What it doesn't have to be investing related, but what gets your giddy up going? What do you like doing for fun
Well,
nowadays?
we get into a pattern in retirement. Like they tell you, you got to walk to stay alive. So no sedentary. You get up every morning, do 100 sit-ups, and then try to get 15 to 20,000 steps in the day. And then 3 days a week, do some light weights, 3 sets of bench, 3 sets of curls, and a lot of walking. But for fun, when the kids come, we go hiking. I've got a couple of motorcycle projects I'm working on, but the older I get, the less I don't belong on two wheels anymore. I'm 67 years old. Come on, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know your limitations, I
You
guess.
got to know your limitations.
Yeah.
But I think the most fun I have, honestly, kids, grandkids come over, get a fire going in the fireplace, have a couple of beers with the kids. It's just kind of interesting because then you sit down, you have a beer with your sons. It's like, what? I really am old, you know? But spending time with your wife, going down to the beach in January. Who goes down to the beach in January, right?
Well, I did, but it was just because I went to the Stennis. We went to Virginia Beach in January of 2020. So
Hey, that's right. You used to live there. Hey, I got to tell you, the boys went there 3 years in a row for their surfing contest. Every once in a while, we got a couple of waves too.
So and I'll end it with that. But
Yeah,
the thing I hear is that those things that you really enjoy right now and give you a lot of deep fulfillment don't cost a lot of money. Sitting around a fire, having a couple beers with your sons, probably pretty inexpensive, but it gives you a lot of joy.
the funny thing that I've heard from other guys that are friends of mine that have retired, they said, and I was a guy that was working 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. You find so much to do in retirement. You never, you wondered how you found time to work. Really, the day fills itself. Go out for walks, go out to lunch with your wife, meet up with the kids, and you don't worry about anything with work. But you don't want to hurry it either. You should enjoy your life as you go along because you don't want to work till you're 68 and then be like, oh gosh, now how many more active years? You don't want to fall down. You want to chew your food properly so you don't choke on it. And if you fall down when you're older, that's it. Next thing you know, you're in rehab, and then you're pushing up daisies. So you have to You
Yeah.
have to stay mobile. You gotta take care of yourself.
Hey, word to the wise. I know this is not going to affect many people, but I've read that one of the things you should always try to keep maintaining is getting up off the floor. Like they say, a lot of people as they get older. I know it's crazy on an investing thing I'm talking about this, but if you can't get up off the floor, then you should start working on that.
Well,
It's
even when I drop
interesting.
down to do my sit-ups,
Yeah.
it's not like I jump forward anymore. It's almost like I
Yeah.
roll to the side and push myself up. But being retired is just, it took some getting used to, Russ. I still love the market. That doesn't seem to have waned at all. I can't wait till 9:30 every morning. And the saddest day is when there's like nothing left. I mean, Russ, I ran those dividends down today within 85 cents. I mean, that's how close I cut it. And my 2025 is not to sell anything, just add to existing positions. And I haven't added any new positions. I did buy a few shares. I told you of ASML because that
Yep.
I think will be kind of interesting to watch for the long run. And it's not a lot of money, just a few shares.
It lights you up. It keeps you going. It gets you out of bed in the morning, and that's what I love. Is that you give me hope that it's still going to be interesting and still something we look forward to.
Oh, Russ, absolutely. But
Yeah.
you got to hyper accelerate it now. And if I had to look at my younger self, I did as best I could. But I think I would have tried to push it more, but not to the expense of enjoying your life and having fun with your wife, your kids, your friends, and family. You don't want to be that guy, Ronald Reed. He was you read the story. He dies, and I thought this guy was penniless. He had nothing. He ends up having $6-7 million. He enjoyed the market, so you could say it was a life fulfilled. But you want to enjoy your life as you go along because it's not a given. You don't know what tomorrow brings. I've written down a lot of stuff here. I don't know. It's sectors. I don't even look at sectors. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I know that there are different ebbs and flows on you should own 9 sectors and you should have the consumer and then you should have financial and I just what did I
Yeah.
say here? I said I just buy like to buy great companies with histories of increasing dividends and durable moats.
Very well said, and I think we can leave it there. We'll do
Okay.
a lot of good information. I love that,
I'm
and a
sorry I
lot of
talked so
wisdom.
much tonight, Russ.
No, it doesn't matter to me, dude. I don't care. I enjoyed it. Whatever else anybody gets, I don't care. I loved it. I had a good time. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I think there's a lot of people that are going to get some value out of this.
Russ, I got to tell you one last thing. On a
Yeah,
personal note, I've enjoyed it, and what you said about the ETFs gave me pause. I think that I'm running a little test on it. It turns out, I think I told you earlier, I have 12 ETFs already. Everything from
yeah,
XYP, all the symbols, SCHD, the VOO, the SPY. I don't see why you can't make a portfolio out of ETFs and just put it on autopilot. On a 401k, max out your company match and let it take care of itself. You don't need to pick individual stocks anymore. Back in the day, there were no ETFs when I was investing. No, there was no such thing. There
yeah,
were just the beginning days of mutual funds. And investing in stocks was a very secretive business. Wall Street and those guys, they didn't want you in. They didn't want an average person doing anything but going to a financial advisor. And even a financial advisor back then was big bucks to go see. One last one. Vida Nelson, the money paper, one of the early newsletters I
hmm,
subscribed to. She helped guide. If you ever get a chance, it's called Money Direct now. I think. But
okay.
the money paper newspaper isn't published anymore. But Vida Nelson was influential in some of my decisions to add as I went along.
Vida Nelson. That's a name I'm not familiar with. So,
Now,
I'll.
Vida Nelson, VITANELSON, and I think she helped a lot of people get started on direct stock purchase plans. That was back in the day when you could buy stock direct and save investment and brokerage fees. If I could offer any advice at all those, just ignore the noise and don't buy companies because you or I say they're great.
Yeah.
Look at those companies and say, which ones do you like? And then get a group of them, put them away, reinvest the dividends as fractional shares, and forget about them. Be patient. And that's really hard. Discipline and patience. I'm not a patient person, but the discipline of not looking at it every 15 minutes. Put your tickers in and say, oh, what did Apple close at today? But they're
Right.
the greatest company in the world. 237.87 a share.
Get it and forget it. You need to put that on a T-shirt, man. Trademark. Have your kids get you a T-shirt with it on
Hey,
it.
look, all my kids, one of them, my son-in-law, he's an accountant. All he is all about is the ETFs. He says,
Yeah.
and he read Random Walk Down Wall Street. He said, hey, and they don't necessarily are interested in the market like you and I are. We love the market. Yeah, the last thing I'm going to say, the stock market, in my opinion, is where one of the last frontiers where the everyday person can still make themselves, well, I would say they could make themselves a millionaire if they start early enough. They can still make themselves wealthy and self-sufficient and not be under the thumb of anyone.
And they can also outperform the professionals. Say, if I started playing basketball today, there's no way I'm going to beat LeBron James, but
Me
I can
neither.
definitely outperform, even if it's by chance. I can outperform a professional fund manager. Not going to happen on an NBA basketball court, but in this realm, you're right. It's where the little guy has just as much of a chance as some of the big guys.
Well, they're trading in and out every year because they have to show, look at my fund, look at my fund. I was better than last year, and next year I'm going to be
Right.
even better. So they're in and out, in and out, in and out. I mean, you would have looked like a genius just to own the Magnificent Seven. Let's buy some Apple. Let's buy Nvidia. I
All
don't
right.
know,
Well,
but I think
we'll leave it there. A lot
my
of fun, a lot
pleasure.
of wisdom shared, and it's for everybody else watching. Thank you so very much, and for hanging with us this long. And we'll see you in the
Thanks
next
for
one.
thanks for putting up with the old guy. That's the other problem. You get older, you talk more.
It's not a problem, Jonathan. No,
Thanks,
not a
Russ.
problem.